The year was 2047 and Earth was dying. The storms came every week now, tearing through cities like angry giants. The oceans rose higher each month, swallowing coastlines and turning millions of people into refugees. The air was thick with pollution, and the heat was unbearable in most places. Scientists stood in front of cameras and told everyone the same terrible news. Humanity had maybe 2 years left before everything collapsed completely. Captain Henry Blake sat in the control room of the Earth Defense Station, watching another hurricane form over what used to be Florida. He was tired. Everyone was tired. They had tried everything to fix the planet, but nothing worked. Every solution came too late or made things worse. He sipped his coffee and wondered if his daughter would live to see her 20th birthday. Then the sensors started screaming. Something was coming through the atmosphere. Not asteroids. Not space debris. Ships. Dozens of them appearing in orbit like ghosts materializing from nowhere. Henry's hands shook as he reached for the communications panel. This was it, aliens, real aliens, and humanity was in no position to fight anyone. The first message came through in perfect English. A calm voice, neither male nor female, spoke through the speakers. They called themselves the Kalahari. They had been watching Earth's distress signals, the electromagnetic screams of a dying world reaching into space. They were here to help. Henry didn't trust it at first. Nobody did. But the Kalahari ships just waited in orbit, making no aggressive moves, sending no demands. After 3 days of tense negotiations, a shuttle was allowed to land at the United Nations complex in Geneva. That's when humanity saw them for the first time. The Kalahari were tall and graceful, moving like dancers even in Earth's gravity. Their skin glowed softly with blues and greens, shifting colors like water reflecting sunlight. They had large eyes that seemed kind, and when they spoke through their translation devices, their words were gentle. Their leader introduced himself with a name that humans couldn't quite pronounce, so everyone called him Thalen. Dr. Lisa Morgan was chosen to work with the Kalahari scientists. She was the best climate expert humanity had, though she felt like a child next to these advanced beings. On her first day aboard their flagship, Thalen took her to see Earth from orbit. The planet looked sick from up there, wrapped in dirty clouds, the green and blue colors fading to brown and gray. "We can help you fix this," Thalen said through his translator. "We have the technology. We have done this before for other worlds." Lisa felt tears running down her face. "What do you want in return? What's the price?" Thalen's skin shifted to a warm golden color. His translator explained this meant kindness and sincerity. "We want nothing. Once, long ago, another species saved us from extinction. They asked only that we remember and help others when we could. Now we ask the same of you. Help others when you are able." The work began immediately. Kalahari ships deployed machines that seemed impossible. Huge atmospheric processors that could clean the air in hours instead of decades. Ocean stabilizers that calmed the violent currents and stopped the rising waters. Solar mirrors in orbit that regulated Earth's temperature with perfect precision. The technology was so advanced it might as well have been magic to human eyes. Lisa worked 18-hour days alongside Kalahari engineers. They taught her everything, answering every question with patience. They showed humans how to build clean energy systems that could power entire cities without pollution. They shared medical technology that cured diseases humanity had struggled with for centuries. They taught new farming methods that could feed billions without destroying forests or oceans. Within 6 months, Earth's skies started clearing. The storms became less frequent. The ocean stopped rising. Plants began growing in places that had been dead for years. People around the world watched in amazement as their planet came back to life. Henry Blake was assigned as one of the first human ambassadors to the Kalahari. He spent months on their ships learning about their culture and their history. The Kalahari came from a world called Kelhar Prime, far away in another part of the galaxy. They had been exploring space for thousands of years, always looking for species that needed help. But the Kalahari had their own problems. Thalen told Henry about it one evening as they shared a meal in the observation deck. There was something called the Crimson Void, a region of space where reality itself was breaking down. It was expanding slowly but steadily, and in about 100 years it would reach Kelhar Prime. The Kalahari would need to find a new home or face extinction themselves. "Have you found another planet?" Henry asked. Thalen's skin shifted to a sad purple color. "We have searched thousands of worlds. We found only 3 that could support our biology. All 3 have intelligent species already living there, Species not yet ready for space travel. We will not take their worlds from them. It goes against everything we believe. What will you do? We will keep searching. We have time. And we will continue helping others while we can. This is our purpose. Henry thought about his daughter, now 15 and healthy, living on a healing planet. He thought about the billions of humans who would have died without Kelhari help. He made a private promise to himself that night. Humanity would not forget this gift. Somehow, someday, they would repay it. 2 years after the Kelhari arrived, Earth was transformed. The oceans were clean and stable. The forests were growing back. The air was fresh. Cities were rebuilt with the new technology, beautiful and efficient, working with nature instead of destroying it. The Kelhari had given humanity a second chance at life. Most of the Kelhari ships prepared to leave, continuing their mission to help other species across the galaxy. They left behind a small embassy station near Mars and a promise of friendship. Thalen stayed as their representative, the alien who had overseen Earth's salvation. On the day the main fleet departed, people around the world stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. In cities and villages, in the restored forests and on the healing beaches, humans watched the Kelhari ships rise into orbit and disappear among the stars. Many people cried. Some prayed. All of them felt the same thing. Gratitude beyond words. Henry Blake stood with his daughter on a hill outside the city, watching the last ship vanish into the darkness. She held his hand tightly. "Will we ever see them again?" she asked. "I hope so," Henry said, "and I hope when we do we'll be worthy of what they gave us." He had no idea that 50 years later humanity would get the chance to prove exactly that. 50 years had passed since the Kelhari saved Earth, and the world was unrecognizable from the dying planet it had been. Cities gleamed with clean energy, their buildings covered in living gardens that cleaned the air and provided food. The oceans were full of fish again. Forests stretched across continents where deserts had once been. Earth was paradise, and humanity had not stopped there. Mars now had 3 million people living under its red skies. The terraforming projects were working, slowly turning the cold desert planet into a place humans could walk without spacesuits. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, had colonies beneath its ice exploring the vast ocean below. The asteroid belt was full of miners and factories, harvesting resources and building new things. Humanity had spread across the solar system like seeds on the wind. All of it was built on the foundation the Kelhari had given them. Every clean energy plant used principles the aliens had taught. Every ship that flew between planets used engines based on Kelhari designs. Every child who grew up healthy benefited from medical advances the aliens had shared freely. The Kelhari had given humanity the tools to thrive, and humans had used them well. Ambassador Sophie Martinez was young for her position, only 35 years old, but she had grown up in the world the Kelhari helped create. She had never known the dying Earth of 2047. Her parents told her stories about the terrible storms and the fear everyone felt. But to Sophie, Earth had always been beautiful. She took her job seriously because she understood that everything good in her life came from the kindness of aliens who asked for nothing in return. The Kelhari embassy near Mars was small, just a station with a few dozen Kelhari who maintained contact with humanity. Sophie visited often, bringing news from Earth and the colonies, sharing human culture and learning about Kelhari traditions. The two species had become close friends over the decades. Many humans who worked with the Kelhari thought of them as family. Sophie was in her office in Geneva when the message came through. It was marked urgent, directly from the Kelhari homeworld. She opened it immediately, and as she read the words, her blood turned cold. The crimson void had accelerated. The mysterious force that was slowly consuming that region of space had suddenly sped up. What Kelhari scientists thought would take 100 years had instead taken 50. Kelhar Prime had maybe 10 years left before the void reached it. After that, the planet would be consumed, torn apart by forces that broke reality itself. The message was formal and calm, just stating the facts. The Kelhari had 12 billion people on their homeworld and various colonies. They had ships that could evacuate about 500,000 to space stations and outposts. The rest would die when their planet was destroyed. The message didn't ask for help. It just informed humanity of the situation, as friends would share bad news with each other. Sophie read it 3 times, her hands shaking. 12 billion people, An entire civilization facing extinction, and they weren't even asking for help. She immediately called an emergency meeting of Earth's Unified Council. Within hours, representatives from every major nation and off-world colony were gathered in the council chambers. The room had huge windows looking out over the Swiss Alps, mountains that had almost been destroyed during the climate crisis before the Kelhari saved them. Sophie stood before the council and shared the news. The room fell silent. These were powerful people, used to making difficult decisions, but this stunned them all. Finally, President Alan Hughes spoke. "What are their plans? What are they asking from us?" "Nothing," Sophie said, and she heard her voice crack with emotion. "They're asking for nothing. They're just informing us as friends. They're going to save as many as they can in space stations and keep searching for habitable planets. The rest will stay on their homeworld until the end." Carlos Ruiz, the representative from the Mars colonies, shook his head. 12 billion people. We can't possibly relocate that many. Our colonies barely support the populations we have now. Sophie felt anger rising in her chest. She looked around at all these comfortable people sitting in their comfortable chairs on their beautiful, healthy planet. Can't we? We have an entire solar system. Earth alone could support billions more with the technology they gave us. Mars is getting more habitable every year. We have moons, stations, and resources everywhere. The question isn't whether we can help them. The question is whether we will. An older woman named Patricia Cole, who represented the Asian Union, spoke quietly. "I was 12 years old in 2047. I watched my entire city flood. I watched people die. The Kelhari saved us when we were exactly where they are now. They asked for nothing. They just helped because it was the right thing to do. And they taught us everything," added another representative. "Medicine, energy, farming, engineering. Everything we have, everything we've built, stands on the foundation they gave us." The debate went on for hours, but Sophie realized that everyone in the room had already made up their minds. They were just working through the logistics, the problems, the challenges. Nobody was seriously suggesting that humanity should do nothing. The generation that survived 2047 was still alive, still remembered the fear and the gratitude. They had taught their children about the debt humanity owed, even though the Kelhari never called it a debt. Finally, a vote was called. The resolution was simple. Humanity would offer the Kelhari full sanctuary, not as refugees in camps, but as citizens with equal rights, land, and resources. Earth, Mars, and all of human space would open its doors to the aliens who had once saved them. The vote was unanimous. Not a single person voted against it. Sophie was chosen to deliver the message personally. She took a fast ship to the Kelhari embassy station, carrying a formal document sealed with every government symbol. Her heart was pounding as she requested an audience with Thalen. The old Kelhari was still alive, though his skin had faded to soft pastels instead of the bright colors of his youth. He moved more slowly now, but his eyes were still kind. He received Sophie in the station's main chamber, a beautiful room with windows showing Earth and Mars in the distance. "Ambassador Martinez," he greeted her warmly. "This is unexpected. Something wrong?" Sophie couldn't help smiling, even though she felt like crying. "Thalen, we received your message about the Crimson Void. We know about Kelhar Prime." His skin shifted to a sad purple. Yes, a terrible situation, but we will endure as best we can. Some of us will survive in space." "No," Sophie said firmly. She held out the document. "All of you will survive. Read this." Thalen took the document carefully, his long fingers unfolding it. As he read, his skin began to glow brighter and brighter, cycling through colors Sophie had never seen before. The translator struggled to keep up, announcing emotions like profound joy, disbelief, and overwhelming gratitude. The document offered everything. Earth would accept 2 billion Kelhari in specially designed habitats along coastlines and in restored forests. Mars could take 3 billion as the terraforming continued. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn were being prepared for billions more. Even Venus was being discussed, with plans to speed up its transformation using both human and Kelhari technology. "This is impossible," Thalen whispered, his voice breaking even through the translator. "This is more than we could ever dream. But humanity, you must understand the cost. The resources, the space, the economic impact on your civilization." Sophie stepped forward and took his hands. Something she had learned was a significant gesture in Kelhari culture. "You gave us a future when we had none. You asked for nothing. You taught us how to survive and how to thrive. You showed us how to be better than we were. This isn't charity, Thalen. This is family helping family. This is what you taught us to do." The old Kelhari was silent for a long moment, his skin pulsing with emotion. Finally he spoke. "I must consult with our Homeworld Council. This decision affects every Kelhari alive. Take all the time you need," Sophie said. "But know this. The offer stands no matter how long it takes you to decide. We're not going anywhere, and neither will your people, not if humanity has anything to say about it." She left him there, staring at the document, glowing like a star with hope. The response from the Kelhari homeworld came within 1 week. Every news channel in human space broadcast the moment when the Kelhari Council's message arrived. Billions of people stopped what they were doing to watch as the message played. The Kelhari Council spoke with voices full of emotion, their skin colors shifting through grateful golds and humble blues. They accepted humanity's offer with tears that looked like liquid light rolling down their faces. The great undertaking began the next day. That's what people started calling it, the massive effort to prepare human space for 12 billion alien refugees. It was the biggest construction project in human history, and everyone wanted to help. Linda Foster was put in charge of the Earth integration teams. She was an engineer, one of the best, and she had personal reasons to work hard. Her parents had survived the 2047 floods by pure luck, rescued from a rooftop by emergency crews. Linda grew up in the world the Kelhari helped create, and she was determined to give them the same gift they had given humanity. The plans were enormous. Along Earth's coastlines and restored forests near lakes and rivers, huge habitats were being built. These weren't simple buildings. They were living spaces designed specifically for Kelhari biology and culture. Each habitat would house hundreds of families while maintaining the connection to nature that was essential to Kelhari life. Linda walked through the construction site in what used to be the Amazon rainforest. The area had been dead 50 years ago, burned and destroyed. Now it was green again, full of life, and rising from the forest floor were structures that seemed to grow naturally from the landscape. They combined human engineering with Kelhari architecture, buildings that looked like they belonged there. "The atmospheric systems are online," her assistant told her, reading from a tablet. "The habitats will maintain perfect conditions for Kelhari biology. Temperature, humidity, air mixture, everything." Linda nodded, watching construction robots place living walls, vertical gardens that would clean air and provide food. "How many can we house here?" "This complex? About 50,000 families. We have 200 sites like this around the world, all scheduled to be ready within 5 years. 5 years to prepare for the first wave, then 5 more years for the rest." The timeline was aggressive, but humanity was motivated. Every nation contributed. Every colony sent resources. The asteroid belt mines increased production, sending metals and materials. The factories in orbit worked around the clock, building components that were shipped to construction sites across Earth and Mars. Commander Pete Sullivan oversaw the Mars operations. The red planet was being transformed even faster than planned. Atmospheric processors, improved designs that combined human innovation with Kelhari technology, were turning the thin carbon dioxide air into something breathable. It would take decades to complete, but areas were already becoming livable with minimal life support. Pete stood on the rim of Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system, and looked out at the construction sites dotting the landscape. Massive domed cities were rising, each designed to eventually open to the Martian air when the atmosphere was ready. Underground habitats connected them, creating a network that would house 3 billion Kelhari. "We're actually doing this," his second-in-command said beside him, a woman named Julie Harper. "We're giving them a whole planet." "Half a planet," Pete corrected with a smile. "The other half is still ours. We're sharing." Dr. Gregory Wells worked on the biological side of things. He was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life, and he had spent the last 20 years learning everything about Kelhari biology. Now that knowledge was crucial. Every settlement location had to be tested to make sure it could support Kelhari life long-term. Gregory and his team traveled to hundreds of locations, testing soil composition, atmospheric conditions, radiation levels, and thousands of other variables. They worked with Kelhari medical experts who came ahead to advise. Together they made sure every habitat would keep the Kelhari healthy and comfortable. "The coastal regions are perfect," Gregory explained to a council meeting. "The Kelhari evolved near water, and being close to oceans helps their immune systems. The forest habitats work well too. The only places we need to be careful are the extreme latitudes. Too cold naturally, but we can regulate that with the heating systems. Schools across human space began teaching Kelhari language and culture. Children learned about the aliens who would soon be their neighbors. Human families volunteered to host Kelhari individuals in small groups to help them adjust to their new homes. Cultural exchange programs were set up, allowing humans to visit Kelhar Prime and learn while helping with the evacuation preparations. Sophie Martinez traveled to Kelhar Prime to see the world that had produced such remarkable beings. The journey took weeks, even with fast ships, but it was worth it. Kelhar Prime was beautiful. The cities looked like they were made of crystal and light, growing organically from the landscape. The Kelhari had never conquered their planet. They had learned to live with it, and it showed. But on the horizon, visible even in daylight, was the crimson void. It looked like a wound in space itself, a darkness that seemed wrong somehow, that hurt to look at. Sophie could see stars disappearing into it, winking out one by one as the void expanded. She met with Thalen in the Great Archives, massive buildings filled with the accumulated knowledge of Kelhari civilization. Thousands of scholars, both Kelhari and human, worked day and night to digitize everything: history, art, literature, scientific discoveries, philosophical texts, everything that made Kelhari culture what it was. Nothing would be lost. "We're saving what we can," Thalen told her as they walked through halls lined with data crystals. "But some things cannot be saved. The feeling of this world's air, the sound of our twin moons rising, the taste of water from the Silver Sea. These exist only in memory now. Then we'll help you create new memories," Sophie said. "On Earth, on Mars, everywhere we're building homes for your people. They won't be the same as here, but they'll be good. They'll be safe, and your children will grow up healthy and happy." Thalen's skin shifted to grateful gold, because humanity chose compassion. "You could have offered us a few space stations, some limited sanctuary, and history would have called you generous. Instead, you opened your entire civilization to us." "You did the same for us," Sophie reminded him. "When Earth was dying, you didn't just give us a few tools and leave. You stayed. You taught us everything. You made sure we would thrive, not just survive. We're doing the same thing because it's what you taught us. You showed us how to be better." Back in human space, the construction continued without pause. Entire industries had pivoted to support the undertaking. Companies that made spacecraft were now building evacuation ships, huge vessels designed to carry 50,000 Kelhari at a time in safety and comfort. Factories that produced consumer goods were now making the specialized equipment needed for Kelhari habitats. And remarkably, humanity's economy was thriving. The challenge had created jobs, sparked innovation, and united people in a way nothing had since the climate crisis. People felt purpose. They felt like they were part of something important, something that mattered. Children in classrooms built models of the Kelhari habitats. Artists created works celebrating the coming integration. Musicians composed pieces that blended human and Kelhari styles. The cultural exchange had already begun, even before the first refugees arrived. Linda Foster stood in the completed first habitat complex and looked around with satisfaction. The buildings rose gracefully from the restored rainforest, their living walls covered in plants that would help Kelhari feel at home. Water flowed through carefully designed channels, creating the sounds of streams and small waterfalls. The air inside was perfect, tested and retested to match Kelhar Prime's atmosphere. 5 years, she said to her team. "We built all this in 5 years. 200 complexes around the world, each one ready to welcome them. And we have 5 more years to build the rest," her assistant added. "For the second wave," Linda smiled. "Then let's get started. 12 billion people are counting on us." The first evacuation ships were launched from Kelhar Prime on schedule. Each one carried 50,000 Kelhari and everything they could bring with them. Personal belongings, cultural artifacts, seeds from their homeworld, recordings of their history. They were leaving everything they knew behind, traveling to a world they had once saved, hoping for a new beginning, and humanity was ready to welcome them. The first evacuation ships arrived on a spring morning in 2109. 10 massive vessels descended through Earth's atmosphere, each one carrying 50,000 Kelhari refugees. The ships were beautiful, designed by both species working together, combining Kelhari grace with human engineering. They settled onto their landing pads without a sound, despite their enormous size. Captain Ellen Price commanded the reception operations at the primary Earth landing site. The location was in the restored Amazon basin, where forest and habitat complexes blended together perfectly. She had been preparing for this day for 5 years, but now that it was here, her heart pounded with nervousness and excitement. The first ship's hatch opened slowly. Ellen held her breath. Then they came. The first Kelhari refugees stepping onto Earth's soil. They moved carefully, uncertain, carrying small bags with their personal belongings. Their skin shifted through nervous purples and hopeful blues. They looked tired from the long journey, but alive with anticipation. Human volunteers stood ready to help. They had been trained for months, learning Kelhari customs and language, understanding what the refugees would need. Dr. Kevin Torres led the medical teams, checking each arrival to make sure the transition to Earth's environment was going smoothly. The Kelhari biology was different enough that careful monitoring was important, at least at first. "Welcome to Earth," Ellen said to the first family that passed her, using the Kelhari phrase she had practiced. The mother's skin flashed grateful gold, and she made the traditional gesture of thanks, pressing her hands together and bowing slightly. Social workers like Patricia Yang helped families find their assigned habitats. Each family had been matched with a dwelling based on their needs and preferences. Patricia walked with a group of young Kelhari, parents with 3 children, showing them to their new home in the forest complex. "The walls are alive," one of the children said in wonder, touching the vertical gardens that covered the interior, plants native to Kelhar Prime, grown from seeds mixed with earth plants that served similar purposes. "Everything is designed to feel like home," Patricia explained through her translator. "The temperature, the humidity, even the light. We tried to match Kelhar Prime as closely as possible." The mother looked around the dwelling, tears of liquid light running down her face. "It's beautiful. We thought we would live in cold metal boxes crowded together. This is more than we imagined." Over the following weeks, more ships arrived. Hundreds of thousands of Kelhari came to Earth, spreading across the prepared habitats. More went to Mars, where the domed cities were ready to receive them. Others went to the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, to space stations, to every place humanity had prepared. The integration wasn't perfect. There were challenges nobody had anticipated. Some Kelhari struggled with Earth's slightly lower gravity. Their bodies adapted, but it took time and caused discomfort at first. Others found human food interesting but not nutritious enough. Scientists worked quickly to develop hybrid crops that met Kelhari dietary needs while growing in Earth soil. Cultural misunderstandings happened too. The Kelhari had different concepts of personal space, different social customs, different ways of showing emotion. Humans had to learn that certain skin colors meant discomfort or disagreement, not anger. Kelhari had to learn that humans showed affection through physical contact more than they did. But there was also joy. More joy than anyone expected. Young Kelhari children played in Earth's forests, discovering animals they had only seen in databases. Their skin glowed with delight when they saw birds for the first time, or watched squirrels climbing trees. Human children taught them games and, in return, learned Kelhari songs and stories. In one neighborhood in the restored Pacific Northwest, human and Kelhari families lived side by side. Barbecues on weekends included both species, with humans trying Kelhari cuisine and Kelhari sampling human dishes. The kids played together after school, speaking a mixture of English and Kelhari that came naturally to them. Commander Kyle Bennett worked at Olympus Mons base on Mars and saw the integration from a different angle. The Kelhari who came to Mars were often younger, more adventurous, excited by the frontier spirit. They took to the red planet with enthusiasm that surprised even the optimistic planners. "They're natural pioneers," Kyle reported to Earth Command. "The Kelhari and human engineering teams are working together better than expected. Productivity has actually increased. They see problems differently than we do, and when we combine our approaches, we find better solutions." New cities rose on Mars, reflecting both cultures. Buildings combined the practical human designs with Kelhari aesthetic preferences. Public spaces featured water, which both species found calming and beautiful. Gardens under domes grew food for both populations. It was becoming a true mixed culture, something neither species had planned but both embraced. Back on Kelhar Prime, The evacuation continued in organized waves. The process would take 10 years total, with different groups leaving at different times. The oldest and youngest went first, getting them to safety. Then essential workers, scientists, artists, teachers. Finally, those who volunteered to stay until the end, making sure everything important was saved and transferred. Thailand chose to stay on Kelhar Prime until the final ship. He was over 100 years old now by human counting, elderly even by Kelhari standards. His skin had faded to very pale colors and he moved slowly, but his mind was still sharp. He spent his days in the archives working with scholars to preserve everything. Sophie visited him regularly, making the long journey from Earth to Kelhar Prime every few months. The planet was emptying slowly, the crystal cities becoming ghost towns as more people left. The crimson void dominated the sky now, a spreading darkness that consumed stars and twisted space itself. "Do you regret staying?" Sophie asked him during one visit. They sat in his personal archive, surrounded by crystals containing his life's work. Thailand's skin pulsed with peaceful greens. "No, this is my world. I should be among the last to leave it. Besides, the work here is important. We're preserving more than data. We're preserving the soul of our civilization. It will live on," Sophie assured him. "In your people, in their children, in the culture you're building with us." "A mixed culture," Thailand said thoughtfully. "Neither purely Kelhari nor purely human. Something new, is that bad?" "No." Thailand's translator carried the warmth in his voice. "I think it might be better than what either of us had alone." The years passed. More ships came and went. Earth's population swelled with billions of Kelhari, but the planet handled it well. The technology both species had developed together made it possible. Food production kept pace with demand. Housing remained available. The economy adapted and grew stronger. On Earth, mixed neighborhoods became normal. In cities around the world, you could walk down a street and see human and Kelhari shops side by side. Schools taught in both languages. Hospitals treated both species. The integration that seemed impossible at first became everyday reality. Dr. Gregory Wells published a study showing that the diversity was making both species healthier. Human children growing up with Kelhari friends developed broader thinking patterns. Kelhari children adapted to Earth faster when they had human playmates. The medical community discovered that certain human conditions could be treated with Kelhari techniques, and vice versa. Linda Foster watched her daughter play with a Kelhari child in their backyard, the two of them chasing each other around a garden that mixed Earth and Kelhari plants. Her daughter spoke Kelhari as fluently as English. The Kelhari child loved human music. They were just kids, not thinking about species or differences, just being friends. "This is what we built," Linda's husband said beside her. "Not just the habitats and cities, this children who don't see differences as barriers." Linda smiled, watching the kids laugh together. Thalen was right. It's better than what either of us had alone. The final evacuation ship left Kelhar Prime 3 days before the Crimson Void reached the planet. Thalen was on that ship, along with the last scholars and volunteers who had stayed to the end. They watched from the viewports as their homeworld disappeared into the darkness, consumed by forces that broke reality itself. There was grief. Every Kelhari felt the loss of their world, the place where their species had evolved and built a civilization. But there was also hope. They were not dying. They were continuing, just in a new place. And they were not alone. The final ship arrived at Earth to a celebration that spanned the entire planet. Humans and Kelhari together marked the completion of the great undertaking. 12 billion Kelhari had been relocated. Not one had been left behind. Every single refugee had found a home in human space. Thalen stepped off the ship supported by younger Kelhari, his body weak from age. But when Sophie greeted him, his skin glowed brighter than it had in years. "Welcome home," Sophie said. And she meant it. "Yes," Thalen agreed, looking around at Earth's blue sky, at the mixed crowds of humans and Kelhari celebrating together. Home. 20 years passed after the last evacuation ship arrived from Kelhar Prime. The integration was now complete, and the results were beyond what anyone had imagined. Earth was truly a world of two peoples now, and neither species could imagine it any other way. Cities stretched along restored coastlines where humans and Kelhari lived in completely integrated communities. A child walking to school might have human parents, Kelhari neighbors, and a mixed classroom where speaking two languages was normal. The sight of Kalahari families shopping in markets alongside human ones or playing in parks together was so common that nobody thought twice about it. Mars had transformed into something neither species had planned alone. The red planet now had 3 distinct climate zones, each supporting both human and Kalahari populations. The capital city, New Harmony, was a wonder of combined architecture. Buildings soared toward the sky, designed with human engineering principles but decorated with Kalahari artistic sensibilities. Water flowed through public spaces, and gardens grew under protective domes, creating beauty that belonged to both cultures. Dr. Rachel Kim served as director of the Joint Species Council, the organization that managed the continuing integration programs. Her office overlooked the Pacific Ocean, and she often stood at the window watching Kalahari families walking along the beach. Their children splashed in the waves just like human kids did, their skin flashing happy golds and excited greens. The final economic reports are ready, her assistant Ven told her. He was a young Kalahari who had been born on Kelhar Prime but grew up on Earth. His generation moved between both cultures effortlessly, speaking both languages without thinking, understanding both sets of customs naturally. Rachel reviewed the reports with satisfaction. The integration had not just worked. It had made both species more successful. The economic predictions had been too cautious. Instead of strain, there had been growth. The Kalahari brought different approaches to science, engineering, and art. Combined with human innovation and adaptability, the partnership had created a renaissance. Human and Kalahari research teams had made breakthroughs in faster-than-light travel, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Medical technology had advanced dramatically, with techniques from both species combining to extend healthy lifespans for everyone. Environmental science had leaped forward, making terraforming faster and more effective. We're not just surviving together, Rachel said to Ven. We're thriving in ways neither species could have managed alone. The Kalahari gift for environmental harmony had helped humanity finish healing Earth's ecosystems completely. Every forest, every ocean, every piece of land was now healthy and productive. In return, human innovation and willingness to try new things had helped the Kalahari adapt to dozens of different environments across the solar system. Ambassador Ven, Thalen's great-grandson, now represented the Kalahari in formal diplomatic functions. Though such formality was becoming less necessary, the two species were not separate civilizations in an alliance anymore. They were becoming one unified culture that celebrated both their differences and their similarities. The joint military, called the Solar Defense Force, protected both species across dozens of worlds and hundreds of stations. Admiral Christine Baker commanded the forces, a human woman who had grown up in one of the first integrated neighborhoods. Her second in command was a Kalahari named Soren, and together they had built a military that drew on the strengths of both species. Kalahari are naturally more cautious and thoughtful in planning, Christine explained to new recruits. Humans tend to be more aggressive and adaptable in execution. Together, we're more effective than either species could be separately. The two species had ventured beyond the solar system now, establishing colonies on distant worlds. Wherever they went together. Ships carried both human and Kalahari crews. Colonies were settled by mixed populations from the start. The idea of a purely human or purely Kalahari settlement seemed strange to the new generation. On a space station orbiting Neptune, elderly Sophie Martinez worked on the historical archives. She was over 70 now, her hair completely gray, but her mind was still sharp. She had dedicated her later years to preserving the story of how two species came together, making sure future generations understood what had been accomplished. She was reviewing Thalen's final recordings when the message came. The old Kalahari had died peacefully in his sleep the week before, surrounded by both Kalahari and human loved ones. He had been 132 years old, ancient even by Kalahari standards, but he had lived to see his people fully integrated into human civilization. Sophie played his final recording, made just days before his death. His skin was so pale it was almost white, but his voice was clear through the translator. We saved humanity from extinction because it was the right thing to do, Thalen said in the recording. We expected nothing in return. We did it because another species had once saved us, and we wanted to pass that gift forward. But humanity gave us more than we ever gave them. They gave us not just survival, but a future. Not just homes, but a place to belong. They didn't treat us as refugees to be housed. They welcomed us as equals, as partners, as family. Sophie wiped tears from her eyes as Thalen's recording continued. I am an old Kelhari now, preparing to join my ancestors, but I die happy because I have seen something beautiful. I see human and Kelhari children playing together in Earth's parks, studying together in Mars universities, building together in the shipyards of Titan. I see two species who have become one people, united not by force or necessity alone but by choice and love. We once helped humanity when they faced extinction. They repaid us beyond imagination when we faced the same fate. But the real gift is not what was given or received. The real gift is what we built together, a civilization that is stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than either of us could have been alone. That is the legacy I leave behind, and it is more than I ever dreamed possible. The recording ended. Sophie sat in silence for a long moment, then carefully filed it in the archives where future generations could learn from it. She looked out the viewport at Neptune's blue storms and thought about everything that had happened. The dying Earth of 2047, the Kelhari arriving with help and asking for nothing, the desperate evacuation from Kelhar Prime, the great building effort, the integration, all of it leading to this moment, where two species had truly become one people. In the station's common area, Sophie could hear laughter. Both human and Kelhari voices blended together in conversation and friendship. A group of young people, mixed species, were planning a trip to one of the new colonies beyond the solar system. They spoke casually in both languages, switching back and forth without thinking about it. Sophie smiled, listening to them. These young people had never known a world where humans and Kelhari lived separately. To them, this mixed civilization was normal, natural, the only way things should be. The Kelhari had saved humanity once, giving them the tools and knowledge to survive. Humanity had returned the favor, offering not just refuge but a true home. And together, they had created something neither could have achieved alone. It was not just about repaying a debt. It was about two species choosing to care for each other, to build together to become something new and better. The Kelhari had taught humanity compassion by example. Humanity had proven they learned the lesson by opening their entire civilization to the aliens who once saved them. Now they moved forward together, exploring the galaxy as one people. And wherever they went, they carried with them the most important lesson both species had learned. No one has to face extinction alone. No one has to struggle without help. When you have the ability to help others, you do it, not for reward or recognition, but because it is right. Sophie thought about future generations, centuries from now, who would look back at this time. They would see it as the moment when humanity and the Kelhari stopped being two separate species and became one unified civilization. They would study how it happened, learn from the challenges and successes, and hopefully carry forward the values that made it possible. The stars waited out there, infinite and full of possibilities. Earth and Mars and all the human worlds were now Kelhari worlds too. The solar system that had nearly died in 2047 now teemed with life, with hope, with two species building a future together. Somewhere out there, other species might be facing extinction, struggling alone, afraid and desperate, and when humanity and the Kelhari found them, they would do what Thalen's people had done for Earth so long ago. They would help, asking for nothing, passing forward the gift that had saved both their civilizations, because that was the true repayment. Not just helping the Kelhari when they needed it, but learning from them, becoming the kind of civilization that helps others without counting the cost. That was what the Kelhari had really given humanity, and what humanity had embraced fully. Sophie closed the archive file and stood up slowly, her old joints aching. Through the viewport, she could see a ship preparing to launch, heading for a new colony 3 systems away. Its crew was mixed, human and Kelhari working together as naturally as breathing. The future was bright, and it belonged to both species equally. They once helped humanity, and humanity repaid them beyond imagination.